Welcome in, everybody. Thank you for joining us tonight. Hello, Jen. Great to see you.
Hey, Pete. Good night.
Are you ready? This is going to be a fun night tonight. We've got a very, very special guest. I know that's one that you're excited about. We got to meet down in Florida.
Yep. Yep. About a month ago, we met him, and ever since then, I've been excited. He's got some stories to tell, and I'm here for it.
It's going to be a great night when you cross paths with somebody who has had that 6 degrees of separation from Walt, and he can get it down to 210 maybe. You start talking about something special, and then of course we get to see somebody who's made an impact across multiple mediums for social
Mhm.
across it all the way through, and also for movies, TV, just a little bit of everything. It's spectacular. So let's talk about our guest real quick tonight, because I know you've written one heck of an opening, and I can't wait to hear it. You touched base with me earlier on it today, and I'm excited about it. But before we do it, let's give everybody a little taste. Welcome in first, everybody. I want to remind you that today we're going to do our best to get as much of the chat comments and reactions as we can. If you have a question, make sure you highlight at Pete McDivitt Show or at Monorail Molly. We'll try to pull your comments or your questions up as much as possible. Joel has this is just amazing, Jen. This is just a couple pieces of what he's done that I pulled from the portfolio. The Pirates here. I know you and I loved the rider down there Halloween, and we talked about that many times. Isn't that a great shot?
You think that you see one and it's so good, and then you see his next one, it's like, oh my gosh, like that one's so much better. And then you see the next one, you're like, oh my gosh, that one's good too. It's
Artistic
just
drawing
amazing.
and paintings. It's unbelievable. These are just some of his touches of his work. We'll be putting his links for all of his socials and his website and everywhere that you can go in the chat throughout the night. All of the links are also located in the description of this video. We'll remind you of that throughout the night. Look at that Mad Hatter. How cool is that?
Yeah, love that. Hatbox Ghost.
Yeah, Half goes. It's just unbelievable. And, we talked about the fact of how people can make an impact. It's about those relationships that you build. And, you start talking about through some of his time, we're talking about icons that Joel calls as friends. This is Margaret Carey. If you guys don't know, she is the original Tinkerbell there. Walt, she used to talks about in her time about how she would sit and talk to Walt on his lunch break as he would come through and say hello. And, Bob Gurr, I mean, God, who wouldn't give anything to sit and hang out with Bob Gurr for a little bit here? Tony Baxter. Everybody knows Tony. We've seen Tony with multiple things that he's done. And Alice Davis, an icon, Pirates, and what she did with Small World. Jen, I know Small World is one of your favorite rides of all times. And here's our good friend Joel sitting with Alice.
Yeah. I mean, I'm just fangirling over looking at that picture.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. He's done things in his hometown. He's been the grand marshal of parades in his hometown, and he spoke at Harvard. He can do just a little bit about everything. And tonight, you're going to find out so much. By the end of the night, you're going to be wanting to get with this artist and get his quality work on your walls. I know we're excited because we bought a piece of his down there. And at the end of the show, we're going to tell everybody what we're doing with that piece. So you want to be tuned in on how you'll be able to get a chance to get a signed piece of his work. And if you don't want to wait, you can get on tomorrow and start buying some of it on his website. So Jen, with all that said, I'm ready to get our guest in. How about if you do a little intro, and then we'll bring Joel in to join us for the night.
Sure, let's go. Let's get this started. Tonight, we interview an inspirational storyteller whose Disney and entertainment pedigree is rivaled by few. His life timeline falls years after Walt Disney pioneered new worlds, yet as you'll hear tonight, their storytelling journeys mirror each other. He's an artist, voiceover talent, featured artist at Epcot's Festival of the Arts, and 3D computer-based model designing trailblazer.
Yes, he is.
His creative passion would bring him to design elaborate worlds for 3D TV shows, AAA video games, and multiple virtual reality rides.
Yes.
His friendships in entertainment include names like Steven Spielberg, Bob Gurr, Tony Baxter, and Stan Winston, to name a few. Not big names at all,
Yes.
His
Wow.
incredible range as an artist is known through Worlds of Respect, describing him as inspiring, dynamic, versatile, evocative, and sublime, to name a few.
Yeah.
Joining Pete and I for Disney Dialogues, please welcome our very special guest, Joel Payne.
Hello. Good. Great. Hello, Joel.
Who is this guy? I want to meet this person. He sounds fascinating.
Well, that was one heck of an introduction there, and well, being I'm glad you could join us here tonight on our
Is
Disney
my mom
Dialogues.
back in there writing all this stuff?
Yes, make sure I got with her and got a lot of good stuff on you to make sure your mom and your sixth grade teacher, both of them were spectacular. We dig deep on this show to try to make sure we find out as much as we can. So I'm excited. I think the best thing we always like to do is to start out with just a simple introduction from our guests. You kind of know the topics we're going to get into, but just a top line for people who might be finding you for the first time. If you would be so kind, that would be awesome.
Right. Well, first of all, let me just say thank you, Pete and Jen, for having me on this show. I gotta compliment you on the quality of this podcast. It's so professionally done, and thank you to the viewers that are tuning in. I see we got almost 40 people in there. So hey, if you're watching right now, tell everybody about this because it's gonna be a fun journey through amazing things. I guarantee you that I'm going to be talking about things that you know about, not just with Disney, but with other areas of expertise, video games and rides and shows that I worked on that you have definitely seen. I've worked on a lot of really high profile projects over the years and really just had a blessed life, to be honest. I still kind of pinch myself every day that I've managed to do what I do. I've just really gotten lucky to some extent, just like Walt, and my path has just crossed a lot of different interesting people over the years. So hopefully you'll get something out of this. And at the very least, I'm pretty sure I'll be able to inspire you, even if you're not an artist. I go around and talk to different groups. I went out to Virginia and spoke at a college out there, just talking to business people on a lot of the lessons that I've learned being in the entertainment business, being in the cutting edge, or the bleeding edge of technology. And those lessons really transcend all businesses. And I'll drop a few of those gems here.
Awesome.
For your guests. So,
well, we're definitely excited. I know Jen is chomping at the bit to talk about Walt because that's been one of the things she's really excited about. But I guess I'll start things out here and just say, okay, I found it amazing on some of your past engagements where you have spoken about the story of the interaction between you and your mom and yourself that kind of sparked the passion for your career. Can you share with our audience the story of the importance of that connection and the support from your parents? I would love that.
To be honest, my parents didn't really support necessarily what I did as a kid with art. My father used to say I lived in a fantasy land and I wouldn't make anything of myself. And, just like Walt, his father was none too supportive. It was kind of rode him pretty hard. And my dad played that part very well. But look at me now. I make a living off of my fantasy land. So I proved him wrong. And I think that's really what sparked my motivation to kind of show up my father and show him that I did have something to offer. Just like Walt, I think he had the same kind of, he listened to his father early on in his life, but once he became a man, he went out and kind of did his own thing and proved himself. And there were a lot of moments in Walt's life that kind of parallel mine, where, he had failures and I had to kind of tuck tail and tell my parents about it. And, they were like, we told you, but I get right back up on the horse and get going. But there was one really key moment in my life. And it turns out that Garner Holt, who, if any of you Disney fans out there know Garner, he's the guy that does a lot of the robots for Disney. He did the overlay for Haunted Mansion and just supernatural company, been around for 30 plus years. The sun does not set on Garner Holt Productions assets. They're all over the world, 3,000 of them. And so he had the same experience I did. He saw the World of Color, Donny Osmond debuting the Haunted Mansion. And he said, hey, Mom, Dad, I want to go see this thing called the Haunted Mansion. And they planned on him being a veterinarian because he was raising horses for horse racing. And having a veterinarian was a good inside. Saved the family a lot of money, right? But that was their fatal mistake of taking him to Disneyland, because once he got a hold of that Haunted Mansion, it changed his life and he wanted to do that. Well, the same exact thing happened with me. When I was 5 years old, my mom took me to Disneyland. My parents were poor, so only I could go. My sister had to stay home, but that was my birthday gift. To me, it was like the greatest gift. I'd never been to Disneyland before, and I always talked about it. And my mom warned me about the pirates being robots and not to be afraid of them. I was a little 5-year-old boy, so, but I got on the ride, and I'm sitting there in the boat, and we're in that little swamp area, and I'm just in awe. The fireflies are just blowing me away, and I'm like, are those real? And then I looked over at my mom, and I said, Mom, are the robots, they're so real. And without hesitation, my mom looks over at me and says, sweetheart, those are the waiters. That's the Blue Bayou over the going by up there. And I'm like, oh, all right. And then we went a little further down the river, and there's that old man rocking on the chair. And I said, is he real? Says, no, that's one of the robots. And it was in that moment, right before I went over the waterfall, which I just thought was amazing because I wasn't scared of the skull and crossbones or that waterfall. I was like, let's do this. This is great. It was in that moment I really realized I couldn't tell the difference between the fantasy and the reality as a 5-year-old. And I wanted to learn how that was done. Like, I just was a kid wanting to look under the hood. Much like Bob Gurr. Bob was, he's a friend of mine. I've taken him to a couple events that involve cars. And I always know I could find Bob, and it's mostly just the back end of him hanging out of a front end of a hood. He's deep in that hood, looking in there, figuring things out because he's just a tinkerer. And he's curious. And Walt was curious. That curiosity is what sparked it all.
I love it.
I said, Mom, I'm going to be a famous Disney artist someday. I'm going to work with the Imagineers. This is going to be my career. So that really set it all up.
I love it.
That was the beginning.
Ken?
Now, my stepmother was really responsible for encouraging me because she, that was my birth mother that took me on that. But my stepmom, she was the one, every Christmas, she would go out and buy these really big, thick art Disney books that had all the cells. And I've got one of them here, actually. Hold on one second.
I love a guest that comes with props. I got to be honest.
This since I was a kid.
Okay.
And this is one of my favorite books. And as you can see, it's got all these really beautiful, giant sections of the, that just, got me excited about art. So these books, this book back in the day was like a $50 book. That was an expensive gift to be given me. And my mom bought every single one that she can get her hands on. And so I told my stepmom, I'm like, I want to work for Disney. And she said, if you believe you can do it, son. And she really encouraged me. And then when I turned 17, my uncle drove me up to Disney Studios right at the gate and said, this kid, he's got more skill than all your other people in there. We need to get him a job. How does he apply? And he was so brazen about it.
Wow.
And, of course, that was a weird thing to do. And of course, that went nowhere. But I did get an application. I filled it out, and then I still have we're currently not looking for 16, 17-year-old kids. It was not going to happen, but I still have that letter of dismissal. But it didn't stop me.
That's very cool.
Once I got into high school, I could have taken Spanish or art. I took art, and the very first painting I ever did was a Pinocchio painting. It was my very first oil painting, and I still have it.
Cool.
And people look at that and think, you were born for this,
Love it.
And the rest is history.
The rest is history. Jen?
Yeah, that was an insightful story. It's a perfect transition to my next question. You recognize Walt Disney as your hero, and I'm intrigued to hear the impact that Walt has made upon you and the parallels that you talk about, the parallels to his life. Can you elaborate on that for us?
Right. Well, if I'm talking about food chain, God is the number one. Okay, that's what guides my life.
Yeah.
Number two is Walt. Because this is a man who didn't graduate high school. He ran off to World War II and tried to break into the war because he cared about our country. He was a patriot. Mm-hmm. Everybody thought he was crazy. Everybody didn't believe in him, and a lot of those things. A lot of his life parallels mine. Some of the craziest things, I got things I didn't know until I was in my 40s because I didn't really read too much about Walt Disney. I was more fascinated about his Imagineers. Mark Davis, in particular, was like the number one inspiration to want to work with Disney.
Right.
I loved his character design, pirates. I mean, that was where I gravitated. So understanding his life and his path was more important than understanding what Walt was about. So I didn't really know anything until I took the Walk in Walt's Footsteps tour and discovered we both like the same exact brand of chili. We both like grilled cheese sandwiches. We both like meatloaf. We both were raised on a ranch. We both had a dream tree that we would climb up in and think about our thing. I had a flip book business. My business went out of business because I was doing it all underneath a macadamia nut tree, and the sap made the paper stick, and that was the end of my animation business. And at the time, I was just kind of puppeteering animation, just like Walt was when he started his company. I went up to the family museum, and I can hear as I was going down the elevator about him talking about how he really wasn't an animator. He's puppeteering things. And that's really what I was doing as a little kid, not knowing that he had done that. And I started voicing my own characters. Eventually, when I got into when I started my own company, I created the GROWUMS, and I didn't know how to animate 3D characters, and we had no budget, so I had to voice all the characters, male and female, and learn how to animate. And my life paralleled exactly to what Walt was going through at the beginnings of his company with that project, with GROWUMS. And I produced 100 cartoons by myself, 75 characters from scratch, voiced most of them, and was really just like a one-man Disney company at that point. So there's just so many comparisons. It's crazy. I mean, the way I handle problems, I've never, and some of this stuff is through osmosis, just understanding the Disney process,
Right.
of there is no, there's a no, but what if,
Right.
what if you did this? And eventually when I got to meet guys like Bob and Alice, and I got to talk to Xavier Atencio, the guy that wrote Pirates,
Right.
They all kind of confirmed my suspicion. And it's funny because as they were talking about Walt, I could hear somehow, some way, just by either osmosis or just by me following that same career path, that I had a lot of the same ways of solving problems, the same optimism, the same way that I would come to conclusions on how I would work with people. It was a little alarming. It was kind of eerie.
Right. But
I gotta be honest. It's a little weird.
It's definitely impressive. That's a great question, Jen. And we're actually going to talk. I think Jen's going to talk about GROWUMS in just a little bit because we wanted to dig into that. I'm glad you referenced that.
Yeah.
That's perfect. I did want to say real quick. There was a nice comment here from Disney Dynamics. This is amazing. Being able to interact with a Disney legend like this is absolutely incredible. That's a nice comment. Thank you. Many of those into the chat. As you look into it, and I want to dig back a little bit here. And in 1995, you emerged as one of the youngest video game directors, pioneering techniques, in digital set creation. 3 years before Robert Stromberg, would coin the phrase digital backlot. Can you tell us about this time in your life building the creation of your company?
Yeah, that was wild. So I was actually working at a company called Studio Arts, and that guy pulled up Troy Linden. He was the programmer that took John Madden football from 2D to 3D.
Oh, wow.
And made EA a lot of money. So he ran this company, and I was working at Nintendo at the time and really didn't like working there. It's a long story, but it wasn't a good fit. I didn't have a lot of creative freedom. And this guy pulls up in a gold car and says, "Hey, I'll offer you a ludicrous amount of money. Come work for me." And when I found out where his business was and that it was literally a single office in a warehouse in Carlsbad, I got scared and said, "Oh, this is scary. I mean, that's a lot of money, but wow, where would I sit?" But I just took a risk, just like Walt did. I just said, look, I should try this and just see what happens. At least I'll get paid well. And but by the time I accepted the job, Russell Kuntz, who worked on the Star Wars movies as the prequels as a technical director, came in and became the art director. So that job wasn't there. So I got paid a little less and worked underneath him. But that was a great deal because he came from Hollywood. and I wanted to work in Hollywood.
You wanted to get there, yeah.
And so I really learned a lot from Russell. And at the time, we had one project called The King, the Sword, the Legend, which was an interactive movie based off of King Arthur.
Mm-hmm.
And I, at the time, knew how to write music. And so I was doing some orchestrations with a full live orchestra. We got a little small group of like 64 performers, and they played multiple instruments. And it allowed us to, through the magic of a recording studio, multi-track, create a big full sounding orchestra. And it was kind of a music library orchestra. But some of these performers were like the Philharmonic and stuff like that.
Right.
Union guys that were working on the table just because that's what they had to do. So we got we went from this one little office to pitching two more games. One of them was mine, Sinbad, which I thought was a great public domain property that had all kinds of, I mean, it's basically God of War before God of War. It had a really handsome guy fighting really awesome creatures with beautiful, damsels in distress. And it was public domain. Everybody knew it. So I thought that was a great thing. So I wrote a script. I put together a show Bible. I got a $2 million budget for it. My partner in crime, Russell Kuntz, got his picked up, another $2 million. So we had $6 million between the projects, and that allowed us to build a 2-story facility that had 3 sound booths with a full 360-degree 2-story green screen studio, which was the first of its kind. So, yeah, it was really just shocking. 24, 25, that was, I was living a dream there, pioneering something. And so I was into, at the time, Alias, which was run on an SGI computer. They were about $5,000 between the software and the computer.
Right.
And I learned that software over the cheaper 3D Studio, which was only a couple $100, because I knew that whoever could afford the computer could afford my salary. So
well, there you go.
that was a wise decision.
It was a wise decision.
Yeah, so we were doing high-end art, and I was the first guy to pre-build the virtual sets, so that when we went on the green screen with the live actors, which I also directed, we had the background on the monitor, so the actor could actually see the Middle Eastern bazaar, or the ship, or the harem room, or whatever it was that we were putting on. So they knew exactly what they looked like in advance, where at the time, the video game industry was only doing everything post, so they would shoot everything on green screen or blue screen, and then they would have to composite everything. So we were doing it on the fly. And the benefit of that was I could light the characters, the actors, to the CG sets.
Okay.
So that they would look more realistic.
Realistic.
And it saved us tons of time, tons of money. And it was funny because I was building about a set a day, at the time, just knocking it out the box. And the owner of the company was really concerned that I wouldn't be able to get all the backgrounds done in time. So he reached out to one of the top premier 3D modeling companies at the time and told them how quickly I was making these things, and they didn't believe it. So they brought that group in, did a tour, and it's really funny what that day that happened, because here I was down in the music room playing my soundtrack that I had written for Sinbad, and then they would continue on the tour looking at the facility, and then I'd be at my computer upstairs, and then I'd be showing them the artwork, and they're like, wait a second, aren't you the sound guy?
Yeah.
So I chose very wisely to get it. I took that risk with that one office gold car dude, because there were way more opportunities for me to be a universal Lego and expand my talents versus working for a Microsoft where I was going to be told what to do, working in a cog within a cog within a cog. So that was something at the very beginning of my career that set me on a great path for becoming the crazy, multi-talented universal Lego beast that I am.
I love it.
I survived a lot of layoffs because I became indispensable.
Well, that's a great way to do it. That is amazing what you did. And there's a couple nice comments I just wanted to highlight. Very impressive by Aliens, Darla. Tim Rempel said, that's awesome. Debbie Bernfeld said, hearing Joel's story is so amazing. Spaceship Ear says, SGI Onyx used to be the size of small refrigerators. And then,
Yeah.
real quick before I go over to Jen for her next question.
By the way, the refrigerator comment,
Yeah.
I'll get to that because we had an SGI reality engine for the virtual jungle cruise, which
we're going to talk about that.
The refrigerator.
Yep, we're going to talk about that. But Disney Dynamics did have a question before I go to Jen, and I apologize.
Yeah.
He says, when you get a chance, I have a question. What is his favorite moment in his career, the time that he thought, how cool is my life? Joel, is there one, or is it just too many to put together?
Well, it was being asked to be and getting congressional look, I got city recognition, state recognition, and congressional recognition as the Grand Marshal in my hometown parade, the Camellia Festival, which ironically, Kurt Russell sat in that seat as Grand Marshal when he was a kid actor working for Disney, and Mickey Mouse himself also was the Grand Marshal because Walt loved that parade going through Temple City, which was kind of the baby version of Rose Parade, which happens, right before that. And so it was just a full circle moment because look, I got D's and F's in high school. I was a severe dyslexic. I had ADHD. I've got OCD. There's a lot of things about me that back in the 80s they didn't understand. And so I really pretty much nearly failed out of school. Turns out once we figured out in college what the problem was, I got great grades and we solved that problem. But so it was a really kind of full circle moment to go back to my hometown with all of these accomplishments and sit and wave at all of the people from my high school. All my alma mater came out. Still gets me emotional. Still really gets me broke up because, man, back then I didn't think there was a place for me.
I love
Which I think, anybody listening, there's probably some kids watching. You probably feel like that. Like, what's my place in the world? The trick is to believe in yourself enough that you just become an unstoppable force of nature and you get there.
Great words.
And I'm evidence to that.
Great
and
words.
Walt is evidence to that,
Great words. Jen, how about take us back into digital backlot, Jen?
Yeah, we want to stay here talking about the digital backlot, but I do want to bring up those GROWUMS again. You dropped some stats that you had 75 original 3D characters. You had over 100 cartoons. Also want to mention that you were featured on The View, on the TV show The View. Like Walt, you voiced many of the characters. So can you just give us a little brief description of this project and tell us about the success?
So I was the principal establishing art director for Elder Scrolls Online in 2009, working out in the East Coast. Well, the housing crisis happened and a lot of people got laid off. And, I was one of the guys that got the shaft. And so I came back to California. I said, if I'm going to go bankrupt anywhere, I'm going to do it in my home state. And this guy somehow, some way through mutual friends found me. He owned this company called Preferred Commerce, and he had a little seed company that was doing these vegetable garden kits that were themed. And I thought that was such a clever idea to teach kids how to grow their own vegetable gardens from seed to harvest. And he wanted to hire me to make some characters and bring them to life. Now, at the time, I didn't know how to animate. So I said, let's start with, I'm not the best animator, but we'll get there. Let me at least model these. Let me design these characters for you. And then we could raise the money and we can hire some animators. So that never happened. We didn't raise enough money to hire animators. I just kept on doing it because I got good at it and saved the company a lot of money. But he had something that was kind of like VeggieTales. I'm like, well, if I'm going to do VeggieTales, I'm not going to do it the way they did it because I can't even tell what the vegetables are. I mean, they're just weird looking things, with costumes. So what I did is I started with the actual vegetable, whatever it was, or the plant, so the corn. I would start with that, and then I would do what Disney taught me to do, is that there's a character in there somewhere. Everything's a character. A doorknob's a character. I mean, so I was going back to my Disney pedigree and what I learned in storytelling. And so I just thought, you know what? If I had a watermelon, it's really the costume that's going to make the character. I mean, that's the thing.
Right.
So I just, and the way that I design very differently than everybody else. So here's one of my gems. So I don't just do things and throw them away. So if I was going to design a cockpit for an airplane, I'd look at a speedometer and I'd look at that as how do I make that speedometer so exciting on its own, separate and apart from everything else. So when I came up with these characters, the first thing I said, I want to come up with a funny name. That just the name by itself is going to be funny. So we came up with Duke the Cuke, Elvis Parsley.
Dude, hold on, Duke the Cuke. Duke the
Duke
Cuke.
the Cuke.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. You just made my
Duke
night.
the Cuke. Right. And then when it came to Duke the Cuke, I'm like, that's funny. Well, what does he sound like? So I was thinking, I'm a big fan of like old school stuff. So Andy Griffith, Barney Fife. So I took like Barney Fife and mixed him with this old character actor that was an old miner that you saw pop up in a lot of Westerns. And he kind of sounded like that, So I took him and then I did kind of a Barney Fife thing. I said, "Hi, I'm Duke the Cuke. I'm the sheriff in town."
Oh my gosh.
That's how the character. And we had the great zucchini. Lord, my right zucchini. And I would take these things and then transform the vocal up a notch to make them sound a little bit more like chipmunks. And so the voice was cool. And then I would work on the character. So the name by itself was cool. The voice was cool. The character was cool. And the dialogue was funny, independent of each part. That way, when you work at that level, when you put it all together, the chances are you're going to come up with a great character. And that's what we did, 75 things. And that raised something like $7 or $8 million in revenue just from the generation of the characters alone, which put that company on the map.
Yes, it did.
So
yes, it did. That's awesome. That's it, Jen. Great
and
question.
It's still going.
It's
still going.
It's still going, and I love hearing the voices coming right from Joe. From hearing something where it starts like that is awesome to me. I want to take a step back to the World's Fair. I want to talk about that for a second. 1999 World's Fair intro, soaring over California was so significant of a project, and soaring remains today, as a park featured experience. Talk to us a little bit about the 1999 World's Fair, if you would, please.
How did that get involved? How did I get involved with soaring? Well, back when I was working for Angel Studios, this is a company that was doing a vertical reality for Steven Spielberg, and that's how I got to kind of get with him a little bit. And that became kind of the predecessor to what ultimately became Tower of Terror. So it was a vertical reality where I'd shot you up 4 stories in front of a big screen, and that was the crown jewel of GameWorks. So if you were out in Ontario Mills, guys, and you remember about, 30 years ago, that was happening back in 1999. So I get this call from my boss, and he's telling me, "Joel, how would you like to go to the 1999 Lisbon's World's Fair?" And all of a sudden, I turned into a 5-year-old kid again back at Disneyland, remembering how Walt had made his mark in the World's Fair. And I'm related to Lincoln, so you can understand why this mattered to me. Now, I hadn't met Bob yet, who designed the Lincoln, the first Lincoln for that thing. But I'm like, oh my God, I get to go to the World's Fair just like Walt. I want to see what this was about. And it was the world's first dome projection system. And it didn't have an attraction connected to it. It just had a few like railings that they set up and a linoleum floor. And so my job was to animate a fly through on that very weird shaped fish-eyed projector, that dome. Right. And nobody had ever done anything like that. So they told me I needed to get my passport. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is the first time I'm ever going to be out of the country, and they're paying for it. And I had to spend $1,000 to expedite it. And on the day that they told me that I was going to get on the plane, they said, "Joel, you can't go." I'm like, what did I do? They said, well, everybody's throwing up. 80% of the people watching this thing are throwing up. The fly through's too fast. It's banking too much. We got to have you stay back and re-render this thing 1 million different times. And so I missed the fair, but I got to pretty much work on, how that technology can embrace movement. And we quickly discovered why motion-based rides make you so sick. When what you're seeing isn't lining up with what you're feeling, your inner ear gets confused and you hurl.
Right, you do hurl.
So, yeah. And eventually, Disney bought onto that technology, and the rest is history. And they used what I did in terms of how far you can bank and turn and how fast you can go to kind of be the prerequisite to what they would ultimately shoot on film.
I love it.
So it was really amazing to see that technology out in California when I never got to see it in in life, until that they built that thing. So I was really happy to see it working and doing what it does. And now the child of that, all these years later, is the Flight of Passage, which I was just on in Animal Kingdom. So I'm like crying tears. I'm like, my baby has had babies.
Babies have babies. So, I love it.
I mean, it's neat to be the first of something and then see years later where it's gone. And so the virtual Jungle Cruise is another one of those firsts.
Well, Jen wants to go to that. Jen, I know I've already. She just texted me and said I want to go to Jungle Cruise next. But before I let her go to Jungle Cruise, if you guys are watching tonight, a couple quick things. One, first and foremost, if you didn't just pick up what this gentleman just said, 3 things. 1, he was part of Soarin' at the very beginning. 2, his importance flows all the way through out over into the land over there of Avatar. And then also, he is a descendant of Abraham Lincoln. Hello.
I got that.
Hello.
I'm his exact height.
Yeah, you're exactly right. If you haven't clicked all the links that the moderators are dropping in tonight, make sure you're following Joel on all of his social media fronts. You'll be able to keep up with everything he's got going. Trust me, you're going to know a little bit more. I thank you for being here tonight. With that, before I get into trouble myself, I'm going to turn it over to Jen, who knows a little bit about Disney Quest. I think she might have been on this ride.
I know, that's why I was excited to ask this question, because I actually did ride this ride at Disney Quest. I do remember it. So we're gonna go to the virtual Jungle Cruise ride that was at Disney Quest, which, for those of you that don't know, it was the interactive building over at what was Disney Springs. Back in the day. This 3D project was a precursor to the stylings used in your paintings. Can you talk about the importance of this opportunity in your career?
Yeah, this was, again, at Angel Studios, which was kind of these are the guys that did the animation for Lawnmower Man, which I ultimately became friends with the director who directed Lawnmower Man. He's now doing the world's first fully created AI movie. And so they were really kind of leading the cutting edge on location-based entertainment. So that was the first project I did at Angel Studios. So I was working at Studio Arts, and that company collapsed, unfortunately. And then right across the street was Angel. And I heard that they were working on a virtual Disney ride. And obviously, that to me was like, oh, that's the holy grail right there. I basically told them, pay me anything. I'll just sleep here. Let me work on this. And they quickly made me a level modeler. So they were too afraid to connect to 3D Studio Max, which again was the low end software. So they built their own 3D modeling program called Node, and it was a painful process because there was only any 3D artist out there knows you need a front, side, and top orthographic view. Well, we only had one view, and it was a perspective window. And so modeling, where we had to type in coordinates and type in how we would tile textures on a surface, was by far the most painful 3D project I've ever worked on in terms of getting it done. But what did I get to do on it? So I was tasked with the ability of taking a 2D top-down sketch of the river and making the rapids. So I built the entire rapids from beginning to end.
Wow.
The mudslide, the cave systems, the whole thing, all the little bumps, all the waterfalls you go over, the ice, the whirlpools, all of it. Not only that, because I was so proficient at Alias, which we did have, I built a accurate version of the Jungle Cruise boat on my own without even them telling me, because I was such a fanboy of Disney, and showed it to them. And then boom, that was our opening. So we started off, with that beautiful, amazing Jungle Cruise boat. And then we got Zelensky was the host of the attraction, Honey, I Shrunk the Kids.
Right.
To those that don't know.
Yes.
And he was our host, and he had a time machine, and he was going to take you back. So you start off at Disneyland with the Matterhorn in the background on the Jungle Cruise, and then boom, you're on this, you're back in the Jurassic era, and T-Rexes are snapping at your head. And the cool thing about that, it was like I called it the possessed waterbed, because it was basically the Imagineers built this basically it was like a giant airbag with 6 compartments that would fill up with air independent of each other.
Okay.
That would simulate the rapids, and they would rapidly fill up. And so you could, and then they strapped a real raft to it. You could see it in that picture. And then they had a real oar, and they cut a hole into it, and we had roller wheels from rollerblades in there, so that when you stroked along the airbag, it would pick up your strokes, and you could literally navigate down this virtual river with this big screen in front of you. So that was the experience. So all summer long, I got to drive that with a mouse while people were in the real thing, and we would kind of, just like Walt did with Pirates, he would walk down the thing without water, and then he would test it. Well,
Right.
that's what I was doing all summer long, getting test groups that would come in and seeing if they would know how to navigate. And that's when I learned, which I apply in my artwork, different Disney Imagineering techniques with leading with light, and this concept called the weenie wire, which I thought was really funny because it's kind of derogatory. Apparently, yeah, come on, weenies, follow me. But apparently this was like a concept that Walt had when he had gone to a hot dog factory and he saw all the weenies going through on a wire, and it was an assembly line. And so when you're at Disneyland and you're at Main Street and you're looking down Main Street, what do you see? What do you see at the end?
When you look at
You
the
see the castle.
Right.
Castle.
Right? Like, ooh, castle. And then you go down to the castle. And once you get to the castle, what do you see? Ooh, Matterhorn.
Matterhorn, yeah.
And then once you get to the Matterhorn, what do you see? Ooh, submarine. So there's always something in the distance that drew you to that thing. And so that's what the weenie wire concept was about. If the guests couldn't paddle, we would have this weenie wire system that would literally latch onto the boat and pull you in the right direction and kind of lead you to where you needed to go. But we were using lighting to kind of say, here's the door, and everything is this dark, and go towards the light. And so learning about lighting and color and storytelling and throwing in gags. We had this, Zelensky was in a block of ice in the Ice Age section of the ride, and he was just frozen solid. And some of those gags I came up with, some of them came up with the other team, and it was just fun to kind of recreate a Disney attraction virtually. And
right.
it was the longest running virtual attraction in history. So
That's
that Disney ever had. So
setting precedent.
an accomplishment.
It is.
Yeah,
and,
I want to jump in for one second.
Please, go ahead, Jen.
I just want to jump in for 1 second because I chuckled when you said that there were little bumps in the ride. Were you talking about like the virtual reality part of it? Because I remember them being a lot larger than little. In fact, I think they kind of threw me off the raft at one point.
The same ride system that was built for that was the same exact ride system that they used in Indiana Jones attraction, which I got to be one of the first 50 people to ride that because we had this Imagineering connection. So I got to be the first on Indiana Jones at Disneyland. And on opening day, that thing would have flipped your head right off. I mean, it was so violent. And so when our attraction came out, yes, we wanted to make it so that when you went over the falls, you really got to a 45-degree angle where you could almost fall out. And we did have to tone it down. But if you fell out into a big airbag. So it's not like if you fell out a train, the wall of this ride came and smashed you into the ground and you died. So it was a little bit of padding, and we thought, let's give them a thrill. And so, yeah, we definitely had a system that I think if I had that system right now with modern day technology, because again, reality engine the size of a refrigerator built that, but now your phone is that reality engine. That's how far we've come. If I could have that technology today and we had a dome projection system around you instead,
wow,
I guarantee you this would be the most significant ride in Disney history if it was done well. Because it was the most immersive thing at the time, and with modern day technology, you could upend the whole theme park attraction concept. I always thought that's the way that things would go, and you're seeing that in a kind of a haphazard way with the Disney Runaway Train. They're finally using projection technology so that they can easily and inexpensively swap out the stories, and they're really virtually projecting the world. But I still feel like that ride system was genius and could be used today in a way that would just upend all attractions.
Yeah, plus it up a little bit. That's amazing. I love that. I
absolutely.
love that we're sitting here doing this interview with you, and it can take Jen back to memories of what she had, and to be able to find. And I think that's what I really wanted this to be about as we talk, and for the people in the chat. And it's great to see it right here on the main screen with my partner doing the show. You know, we've talked a lot about the pre-buildings up to where your artwork goes, and you have a key term, and I kind of like to touch before we get into the artwork, and we're going to jump into artwork here. I know everybody's been waiting for that. Your mixed media stylings, Joel, of the artwork are just inspirational. They're impactful. They're passionate. Can you share with our audience the details behind what you call believable fantasy artwork?
Right. So back in 2000, being a video game artist who worked on Mortal Kombat and Shaolin Monks and all these different video games over the years, you know, I'm an advocate for digital artists. I mean, digital artists just get slammed into the ground, and it's really insulting to say that a computer does the work for you. It's really a lie that a lot of traditionalists are using to kind of smack digital artists into their place. And so I'm a massive fan of digital art. I feel like I don't care how a painting is done, as long as it's done by a human being. It could be done by a stick in the sand, a crayon, a pencil, an ink blotter. I don't care. All I care is it a pretty picture that a human made that's telling a great story. So for me, I try to get digital art accepted in traditional galleries back in 2000. And if you know about the climate back then, nobody was going for that. It was like the scarlet letter to say you were a digital artist. So I wanted to get that feather in my cap, and I did. I actually managed to do it. And the way that I did it was I walked in with one of my digital paintings that was a hybrid of 3D and traditional digital painting. And I had the print, and it was all in a canvas and everything. And I walked into the gallery. I wanted to convince the owner, but he wasn't there. Well, a guy comes up, a collector, and he's like, "What's that?" I said, "This is my artwork, and I'm trying to get it in this gallery and convince him that it's worth putting up." He's like, "Let me see it." And he's like, "Oh my goodness, that is the most amazing thing I've ever seen. How did you do that?" And I explained to him what I did. And then the owner comes up and says, "What's going on here? Are you stealing my customers?" And he's like, "No, I'm your customer. I buy a lot of stuff in here, and I want that kid on the wall. I will buy that right now, and you can take half of the profits because I know that's what you get. But I want to buy it right now. Put him in here." And that is how I got my artwork on the wall.
Wow.
He's like, "Okay, we'll give him a shot. We got plenty of space." Well, unfortunately, the guy put me in the furthest corner in the furthest part of the thing. You know, it was like in the cobweb area. And, you know, what are you going to promote? A $5,000 original or a $400 print?
Right.
You know? So I quickly realized there was a problem there. And to resolve the problem, I came up with this really crazy process. So if I'm going to do a Minnie and Mickey standing in front of the Eiffel Tower, how would I do that? So I paint on little mini canvases, 8x10s in acrylic, Mickey, and then I'll paint Minnie on a separate canvas, and then I'll paint the cobblestone street, just a section of it, just like I would in the video game business that makes it a tileable texture. And then I paint all the surfaces, the door, the windows, all these little mini canvases traditionally. Then I scan those things in, and then I use a program called Maya, which I helped build as an industry veteran. I was always asked about, how to improve the software, and I get it for free for life. So I model out the city and the Eiffel Tower, but I use those hand-painted textures and apply them to the 3D model like wallpaper. So I'm using a traditional texture, and then I became a Corel Painter master. I helped build that software. If you ever use Corel Painter, all of the papers that are in there, the canvases, the watercolor papers, I created those for the company, and they give me the software for life. And I became a Corel Painter master. So that program literally emulates paint pretty accurately. You can do watercolor and amazing stuff with that program. And they have this thing called a real brush, and you can actually get a stylist where it recognizes the rotation of a fan brush, so it knows the angle, and when you dip it in the ink, in the paint well, the paint will naturally run out, as accurately to paint as you can get it digitally.
Wow.
So I'll render out the scene with all those components, And then I will digitally paint on top of that, and that's a whole nother layer of detail where I'm making it very painterly. I'm because 3D is very harsh and gives hard edges, and so I use the blender sticks to kind of rough it up and make it all kind of go together cohesively. And then it's not done. It gets sent to Disney. They send me a canvas of it, and then I put a minimum of 50% coverage of real paint on top of that, adding even more detail to it. So that became, for the Haunted Mansion 50th anniversary painting, that painting took me 2 years to work on. I nearly went blind painting this painting. I was putting details on with a needle, and I just wanted to get a level of detail, color, and contrast where it felt like you just walked right into this. So 3D adds a certain thing to the mix in a medium. Digital adds its own little mix, and of course, acrylic paint, traditional paint, adds a thing to it. So they all have their own little values that they're bringing to this thing. So anybody can look at my stuff on the art on the wall, and they immediately recognize it as mine. They're like, I know that's a Joel Payne painting it just stands out from everything else on the wall. Now, why did I do that? Because I have more originals than the traditional artists who just have one painting. I could sell the little mini Mickey and the Minnie Mouse and the whole collage of mini paintings that I used with the mixed media master that all of the prints are associated with, right? That are made from.
Yeah.
So I got more originals than the original artist, and I've got more value than a digital artist that doesn't have originals in the process. So yes, that's a very painful process. I don't know of any other artist that could do it the way I'm doing it, because you literally have to learn a phone book of knowledge to understand Maya, another phone book of knowledge to understand Painter, and then you have to know how to paint.
Wow.
Traditionally.
Absolutely.
So
unreal.
It's a high wire act, but it's worked out very well. As you know, I sold out completely, including the paper prints at the festival. I think I'm the only artist that has done that.
Yeah, it was amazing. Well, I want to talk about your influences in that, and to that, Jen. How about you start on that? Let's talk about a couple of his influences.
Sure. So we noticed that your art is influenced by New Orleans real estate, the buildings, the motif, the architecture. Can you elaborate on the importance of these influences and your passion behind them?
Right. So about 8 years ago, I wanted to go and see what Walt fell in love with when it came to New Orleans, because Disneyland, the left side of the park, is really my favorite part, Frontierland, Adventureland. That's where I normally stay, and I'm sure there's a lot of people that agree with that. So I wanted to go to New Orleans to find out what was it about this place that Walt fell in love with, where he loved it so much that he wanted to build a slice of it in Anaheim. I mean, basically built New Orleans in Anaheim. So I went out there, and I stayed at a place that Jean Lafitte, the pirate, who also had a blacksmith shop, which was literally a smuggling ring, who was a part of the Battle of New Orleans. He built the nails that were in the beams of the room that I was staying in. I actually saw a ghost there. I didn't believe in ghosts until I saw one. Now I believe in ghosts. That's a whole other story. But I saw a Civil War ghost there.
Wow.
And, that really startled me. There was a guy walking up in the area, and he came from a place that had a wall, and anyway, long story. But I was walking around in the town, and I'm like, wow, I really feel like I'm in Pirates of the Caribbean, but for real. And it's dirtier, and it's legit. There's age in this thing. It's not nice and clean, polished Disneyland. And I really felt like alive. And I went to the Garden District, and I went to the crypts, and I'm like, I understand now, Walt. I totally get it. You fell in love with this place. There's so much atmosphere. I mean, this is the party going on 24/7, year round. You can even hear jazz music everywhere. I mean, it's literally, if you've never been, it's like culture shock, really. Yeah. I mean, in a good way. It's like, wow, this place exists. So when I came back, I just fell in love with the Garden District buildings so much. And I lived in Maryland, so I knew all about the history of the Shipley Lightdecker house.
Yes.
That Walt, his Imagineers built the Haunted Mansion of, which you have right there is the Shipley Lightdecker house, not the Haunted Mansion, because the top is different. But that was the predecessor to me doing the official 50th anniversary. I showed that to David Whitaker, who was the park art director, he ran the park program, and I showed him that. He's like, well, if you put the ghosts in there and change the top, let's get this for the 50th. And so I just did the painting again.
I love it.
And better. So I took that track a little faster and made it, and I really wanted it to be my opus, and it sold out in a lottery system. I was sitting right next to Kim Irvine, whose mother played Madame Leota, and I told her that I could do the ghost host voice, and that led to me doing the ghost host voice down the.
We're gonna talk about all that in just a minute. We've got are you okay? I know we had talked about 1 hour, but
I'm fine.
If that okay? Okay.
Yeah. It looks like you're growing in fan base here. We got a lot of people watching, so let's do it.
Okay, well, that's good. So, I'll stay with here. I just saw that. I just want to ask you a question about Rivers of America before we get to Haunted Mansion,
yes.
because we've got a bunch of Haunted Mansion stuff I want to cover. But real quick, and I'll just leave the screen here. Rivers of America painting was one of your treasured pieces. What did it mean for you to have it featured for Disney by Disney at Disney for the 100th anniversary celebration?
Yeah, that was first of all, that boat and its history, I know all about it. When Disneyland opened up, everybody wanted to be on that ship.
Mm-hmm.
And so many people want to be on it that it started taking on water, which actually set the capacity of that ship forever. And I know how much Walt loved that ship, and I love that ship just as much as him. And I had never really seen that ship painted in the wall. I saw the trains,
right?
But for some reason, that beautiful Mark Twain had been kind of forgotten, and so I just took it upon myself to do one. I started off with this one around the bend, and it just sold out. And then I did another one called Midnight Steam.
Midnight Steam.
The ship's coming right at you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and so for Rivers of America, and because I'm such a patriot. And I know Walt was such a patriot, and he cared about America, especially early America, Mark Twain and that whole thing. I just thought, I've never seen the keel boat celebrated, and that log cabin celebrated, and that island celebrated, and that ship going by. So I was originally going to have the canoes in there too, but I wanted to keep it, because they over the years, as you know, they've taken away a lot of the Indian representation there.
Mm-hmm.
So I just didn't want to get into the deep waters with any controversies and having my painting changed or taken off the wall. So I just wanted to keep it all independent and keep it about the frontier and about exactly what the river is, which is Rivers of America, and celebrate those vehicles and what it meant to that time frame. So seeing it for the 100th, that was a big deal to me. Seeing it like featured in the gallery on a stand, and people are buying it and love it. I mean, nothing means more to me than giving fans what they hoped for, that celebrate what Walt stood for.
Well, congratulations to you congratulations to you for Disney to select. I know that was stepping out a little bit. I know I have a mansion passionist here. She loves Haunted Mansion, so I'm going to turn it over to Jen. Jen, let's get the mansion rolling. I know you're excited.
Sure. It's when thinking about the Magic Kingdom, of course, it's hard not to think about the Haunted Mansion, which in turn brings us to the original mansion in Disneyland. Your artwork of the Haunted Mansion 50th celebration was acclaimed as one of the best artistic works of the mansion in all of Disney history. Can you share with us a little bit about that?
I didn't know that, but all right. Look, all of the artists know about that painting. That was my first signing event. I was me and my wife were the first people on Haunted Mansion on the day of the 50th. We were literally the first ones. So that was a massive honor. That was a full circle moment. People ran past me once we got into the elevator, but I was the first on. And to me, the mansion means so much to me for a lot of different reasons. One, we have the technology today to recreate the Haunted Mansion in somebody's backyard. We just do. We could do the busts. We could do the robotics. There are hobbyists out there that have. I just went to an event just a few days ago where this bread and breakfast has literally recreated the Haunted Mansion out there in Fullerton. And so to me, it's like it's proof of storytelling that you don't see anymore with the current round of Disney, because they had nothing, you know, and they came up with illusions that still to this day, in my opinion, hold up. They had a ambiance to that thing that was just, you can't beat it. It's just still just works. Right. And even with Disney has all their billions to play with now for the most sophisticated, like Galaxy's Edge and all that, Rise of the Resistance, no doubt, in my opinion, one of the most sophisticated attractions ever. But Haunted Mansions, with its bubble gum and particle board, you know, it still works. You know, there's something about it that, like, wow, these guys had nothing and yet created a masterpiece in storytelling that set a precedence for all theme park attractions from there on out. It still works. Still works for that, to do that 50th and have so many people that I admire, like I had Shag, who was another guy that had a long line, and he came over. I had a line. He had a line. He's like, who are you? I'm like, I'm honored to be in the same presence of you. You're the one of the number one guys, and I'm just new. And so he saw what I did, and Kim saw what I did. She's like, oh my gosh, that's the most beautiful version of the mansion. Can you go get me one? And I was going to buy her one of the canvas prints for $400, framed and everything. And I found out that it had sold out completely. And I think the guys that actually won the original also won a print. So I found out the next day, which was the 50th, official 50th, and we were going to go to this big, you know, we have this big event. They're going to close the park down and everything, that they were going to put the returned print, because he didn't need the print and the original. He had the original. He sent the print back. And so I went to Disneyland hearing that they were going to have some leftovers from the show. And so I wanted to see if I could get that print, you know, because I knew what it was doing. I'm like, I'm going to collect my own stuff. And there was a long line. I'm like, oh, I got here too late. And the first guy, I was walking up, and I was going to walk in and see where it was. And they were hanging it on the wall. And the guy's like, put that down. That's mine. Put it in the back of the box. And I'm like, oh my gosh. I'm like, and we took pictures with the guy. To me, it's like, that was a moment where I realized, okay, I'm on to something here. I'm giving people what they hoped for. I'm giving them something that they could take this painting home, and when they look at it, they feel like it's a little piece of the mansion, which is the reason why I did the paintings. I wanted to feel like you can take a piece of the park home and live in that. For, you know, look, life is tough. We're going through all kinds of turmoil. The country's more divided than ever. I like sitting in my couch and knowing I can look at my mansion right there and just forget about it all for a while, which is exactly what Walt built the park for. That's why he built those berms, so you can see the outside world. That's when you go into that train. It says you're leaving your world and you're entering my world. And it was really to get you to forget about your life's problems and have a little bit of fun with the kids. Well, and so that's what I wanted to do with my art.
Joel, with your passion and for what you brought with this incredible piece, the fact that this comes out of your hand just blows me away. It just seems appropriate to me that you were cast as an iconic voiced actor role as you were given the opportunity to be the ghost host. You mentioned it earlier. You got to give a little bit about the ghost host, and maybe even a voice. I don't know. I'm just begging. I don't know.
All right. So I was sitting next to Kim, and I told her, hey, I could do the ghost host voice. She's like, where have you been? We had to reroute the train, and Paul's amazing spiel had to be cut. We're looking for somebody, and where were you? We interviewed everybody. Do some of it for me. And I'm like, welcome, foolish mortals, to the Haunted Mansion. I'm your host, your ghost host. And she's like, where were you? I'm like, I'm available for parties and, you know, just sign me up. So years go by. Of course, I'm not hired by the Disney park, but a wonderful opportunity called the Grim Grinning Gala, which Garner Holt puts on every year to raise money for STEM. He's got a really wonderful school that he's building, and he's like me. He just wants to give back, and he helps all these kids by raising this amazing event. And I know that he was going to theme it on a mansion. Sure enough, Kim's showing up. I was hoping Bob would be there, but the lady that designed the wallpaper and decorated the Haunted Mansion was going to be there. Raleigh's son, who I knew Raleigh, but I got to hang out with him before he passed away, and he just passed, so I knew they were going to be celebrating Raleigh there with his son. And so I asked if I could do the ghost host spiel and the introductions to their whole event and be the basically the host. And they said, okay, we'll record something and we'll audition you. And Bill Butler and Garner heard it and said, you got the part, and we got a few days to put this together. So I did all of the introductions, and so there I was. They brought me in as a VIP table host, and I had my back to the woman that plays Minnie Mouse. And I found out that my logo was turned into a crystal ball on the table, Wish Pictures logo that you see right there. And it was auctioned off, and they gave it to me because they knew how cool it was for me to see that. It was like very surreal to be in the presence of Disney legends. And I'm not an official Disney legend, so it was kind of you to say Disney legend, but I'm not a Disney legend. That is relegated to people that have windows on the main street. I'm not that guy. I've never worked internally with Imagineering. I've always been outside the company. Even still, I'm an outsider. So, but have I done all the things that Imagineers have done? Yes. Have I contributed to Disney and video games, art, and now, the rides? Absolutely. I've done a lot of weird, crazy things since I was, 25 years old with Disney in different capacities, but I have not earned that legend status. So being at that table and them introducing me as a legend was, just like anybody would react to that. I mean, I'm a normal human being. I'm a fanboy like everybody else. So I was just sitting there thinking, me? Really? No.
I love it.
So when I heard my voice introducing Kim Irvine and all these Disney legends, I choked up and cried. Cried like a big baby. So,
I love it.
Yeah, that was like, wow. And I went to Kim and I said, I told you I could do the ghost host voice. Like, that was you? Oh my goodness!
And just so everybody knows, the Kim he's referring to is Kim Toombs. That's Leota's daughter, who is a key person out there, and obviously Bob is Bob Gerst. These, if you haven't picked up yet, Joel's center of activity is around Disney and credibility, as he is deserving to be there. Myself, Jen, I'm sure you want to stay here in something with the mansion, do you not?
Now, hold on.
Sure.
You asked for a little sample.
Okay.
Let's do it.
Okay. Oh, wow.
Okay.
Normally in the morning, it works out better because my voice drops into Paul's pocket in the morning, but we'll give it a try. I've been talking a lot, so this might work out. And I have the earbuds in, so I can't hear myself, so it might not be perfect, but I'll try my best.
Okay.
Your cadaverous parlor portrays an aura of foreboding, almost as though you sense a disquieting metamorphosis. Is this haunted room actually stretching, or is it your imagination?
Wow.
And consider this dismaying observation. This chamber has no windows and no doors, which offers you this chilling challenge to find a way out. Of course, there's always my way.
Oh my God. Chat,
Wow.
Chat better light it up with hearts right now. I better see hearts galore. Holy heck. Wow. I wasn't.
Hands? I'm okay. Thumbs down, thumbs up. All right.
Oh my gosh, that was amazing.
They're yelling, I love it. I'm hearing goosebumps. This is awesome. I'm seeing hearts. LOL, so good. Oh my God, I'm getting chills. They're going crazy.
I'll tell you a little funny story. So I've been able to do that voice like dead on to Paul for a long time. And one of the biggest pet peeves that guests have when they go to Disneyland is some wingnut doing that voice, trying to do the voice. Well, I could do the voice. So what I like doing is I got a bunch of friends that come with me to Disneyland, and we're just pranksters, just like Walt was. And I'll find my mark, I'll find a family, husband and wife, maybe they're a couple, and I'll make sure that I navigate them right into the center of that room, the stretching room. And leading up, I'm telling about how, I've been in that room and something weird really happened to this one guy. He seemed like he was possessed, and then he was doing the spiel, and then he disappeared out of the room. Like, I couldn't find the guy. It was really weird. So I'm standing next to them, in the center of the room. And I, when we get to that part that I just did, I'll start slowly mumbling it, and then I'll kind of nail it. And then everybody starts noticing as I get louder that I sound exactly like the guy, Paul. And then when the lights go out, I have my cohorts, my accomplices, they're standing behind me. We've all planned this we've done this several times. Now I'm giving it away publicly. I can't do it anymore, and I'll probably get in trouble from Disney for doing this. But when the lights go out, I back up like Homer Simpson through the bushes to the back wall, and my friends close the...
Oh, my God. That's great.
And they're standing there empty, and I'm ducked down behind them with 3 people around me, and you can't see where I am, and everybody's emptying out, and these people are like,
where's that guy go?
And then, as they're trying to deal with the flow, feeling like a salmon swimming upstream, and they're being pushed down the line, I wait until I'm the last person in, and the cast member, they know me, and they take me back up. So I get back up, and I'm waiting for the guests to exit. There's this little cubby hole, a little area right on the exit that I hide in. And as they come around the corner, I'm like, what do you think? Pretty fun, huh?
Oh, my
and
gosh.
these people are like, oh, my God, you just gave us the greatest Disney moment ever. We've been on this ride forever. Nothing new happens, but that was amazing.
I love it. I love it.
So I love doing that for people. It's fun. I mean, there's this guy, what's his name? Gosh darn it. He's a very famous cast member, and his name is just like, I'm having a brain fart right now, but he was a host there, and he looks the part, and he was also at the Tiki Room for many years, and he used to interact with the guests doing voices, and there's a lot of that in me. When I go to Disneyland, I want to have fun. I've been on all the rides over and over, so my goal is just to give guests magic and tell them about the history of Disneyland. And I know so many things from the legends that the plaids don't know straight from the horse's mouth, like Joanna Miller, Walt Disney's granddaughter. I know her. Bob's got some of the greatest stories of all time. He's the greatest storyteller.
Well, we got a couple things we want to still hit with you here real quick. So, Jen, I know you wanted to hit on Madame Leota.
Yes, because that was just last month at the Festival of the Arts that we saw you down there, and we purchased one of these prints, the Haunted Mansion Madame Leota print. Now, this print is incredible, and it comes with a story tying directly to the legendary female Imagineer herself. You want to share that story with us?
Yeah, so Haunted Mansion, the seance room, that's really the pinnacle moment where I'm like, how is that happening? There's a head and a ball talking. I mean, it just blew me away as a kid, as it does many kids that ride that. But I always wanted to know what was on that book, So this is the first time you ever get to see what was written on those pages, because you can't see it in the ride. The angle, and it's too dark. It says death. It's an incantation that brings on death. So if you ever wanted to know, it's in that painting now. You could see it for the first time. The other bit of history, which is I've always seen Madame Leota painted very cartoonized. And I found out from Kim and from other people that, her mom only got paid $100 to tie her hair to that chair. So she didn't sign away her likeness forever. So nobody's really allowed to paint, Leota tombs, accurately. So this got approved. So I can only assume that Kim, knowing me and knowing my art, was probably ran by her, and she said, go for it, because I have never seen Madame Leota painted accurately with her real face in it. So to me, whatever the powers would be, whether it was Kim or somebody that worked with Kim, or she had to have seen it, because she owns the rights to her family's, her mom's likeness. I mean, and she played her mom's part in the Nightmare Before Christmas version. She plays her mom's part. So to me, this was just like a really just luck of the draw, I guess. I mean, I don't know how that happened. I have to assume Kim saw it and approved that, because I can't think of any other way. So to me, this is my goal with all of my Disney stuff, is to, if I was given a task to paint something, I'm thinking in my head, how would I impress Walt Disney himself if he tasked me with this? And I got to tell you, he certainly wouldn't have painted the Haunted Mansion in a squash and stretch with Mickey with fangs and Goofy as with bolts as Frankenstein. No, the mansion needs to be the way he intended it, which is that it's a beautiful plantation house and the ghosts are on the inside. And let's make it as if it actually existed. And that's what he did. For many years, it was empty, and all it was a house that you would walk by. And that's what drew everybody into it, because they wanted to know what was going on inside. Well, I paint my paintings in a way that it's like, these things are real to me. The seance room is real. You know, the Jungle Cruise is a real tour. The trains are really going to a place. The island's legit. You know, if you think about everything that Walt stood for, he didn't need other people's IPs that he can exploit into the ground. He came up with his own ideas, or used classic fairy tales in his own take, and reinvented stories that he knew worked, that had been around forever. And he made it his own. You know, he made it his own. And so for me, I'm a traditionalist. I go back to Walt's original thinking, and I want to honor what made Disneyland, which is that we didn't have a Pirates of the Caribbean movie before Pirates was made. Walt was just a genius and knew how to tell a great pirate story. And he got X on it, and X was a genius. You know, he was just a beautiful man, beautiful storyteller.
Perfect combination. Perfect combination.
Yeah.
Spaceship Ears reminded us that the cast member's name out there was Maynard, legendary cast member. So,
yes, Maynard. Thank you.
I wanted to acknowledge. Thank you, John, for throwing it out there.
He got a slap on the hand for being so wild.
He did.
And rambunctious. But I think if Walt had been alive and he saw that guy doing that, he would have instructed all of his cast members to have fun with the guests.
And have fun with the guests and do it.
They moved him from the mansion to the tiki, and they kind of said, "Don't do too much of this and that." And they kind of, I think they kind of
retired him out. Kind of, yeah, they did.
Yeah.
So, before before we leave the mansion, real quick, I've got to ask you one thing. I got two. Before I ask you, I got two things. One, I want you to know, Joel, what we're doing. You know that Jen and I purchased one of your prints down there, and you were gracious enough to sign it for us. What that's is here's what's we're doing with that. We wanted everybody to see your work tonight. And every year at my August meetup that we have, we're having our third one this year. We've got close to 80 people coming from around the globe to come to my corner of the world in Maryland, just talk Disney, have fun, go to a baseball game, just enjoy the things that Walt would have wanted people to do in friendship. Well, one of the things we've done is we raise money for the American Heart Association, because we have someone in our community who's very close to that. Last year, we raised $2,500 for him to help start his thing. He ended up raising $9,000 total this year. So your print, the signed print, is going to be one of the key things in when people donate. Every time they donate $10, they will be given a bid in to get it, and then we're going to spin a wheel. So the more you donate, the more chance you get. Your picture is going to be one of the key pieces this year in August for our community thing. That someone in our Disney community is going to help people with the American Heart Association and get your piece hanging. So thank you.
Well, hey, let me stop you there for a second, because my father just had a big bypass heart surgery.
Okay.
So this is obviously close to my heart, no pun intended. But anytime that my artwork can raise money, I'm actually doing something right now for the women's club in Hollywood. Right now, we're taking it over and we're turning it back into a museum. Charlie Chaplin used to frequent it. His piano's there. I used to go and help the girls. And so I'm doing a lot of stuff like that. I actually helped save Walt Disney's uncle's house. That was going to be demolished. I got Joetta Miller involved, and we saved that house, made it a landmark. I also helped save one of the Rainbow Ridge trains that had been rotting away on the rivers of America, actually, not too far from that painting that I had painted. So I donated about three or four pieces of my artwork, and it raised the most money to save one of those trains was at Walt's barn. So anytime my artwork can go to a good cause, just call me up. If Disney lets me do it, I do it. So that's important to me that you're doing that. So thank you for honoring me by using my artwork in that way. I'm 100% behind that.
Thank you. Appreciate it. I'm excited about it. So I've got to ask you, because I know Jen wants to talk about Pirates of the Caribbean, and Al, she's excited. It's one of her favorites. I got to ask you real quick. tell everybody just a little bit about the book in the Haunted Mansion and signing it, please. It's incredible when I hear that, if you wouldn't mind.
Well, after doing the 50th anniversary Haunted Mansion celebration painting, the cast members were aware of that, and a lot of the cast members actually bought one of the paper prints when it was put in the gallery. So, and because I could do the ghost host voice and all those things, these guys, in terms of my contribution to the history of Haunted Mansion, honored me by having me sign that, and so I got to go down into the kind of the control room area and signed this very special book that a lot of the people that have, again, contributed to the Haunted Mansion, I got to see the keys. There's like these keys. And another time I got to climb up into the, I call it the baby bottle lookout tower at the top. Right. Very dusty up there, just to see what was up there. So I've been able to have dinner in the gallery with Alice during the Mark Davis Centennial. That was crazy. Got this really great picture of her looking like she's doing a seance, but she was actually asleep. She had dozed off for a second. And Bob standing next to, he was holding one of the, Bob Gurr was next to the groundskeeper, doing this. And I got a picture of him doing, yeah. And, that Mark Davis Centennial was the first time I met Alice. And she invited me over to her house, and I got to see all of Mark's private paintings that he'd done, a lot of Disney stuff. I mean, I'm just a kid in a candy store with these interactions with people, and so for me, I'm gonna drop one of my words of wisdom. Something that my grandmother told me. It's like, Joel, it's not the grades you make, it's the hands you shake that matter. And that really applied to Walt Disney himself. And so anytime I'm around people where I have an opportunity to engage somebody, I do, because, and look what happened. Here I am on your show for that exact reason. That philosophy works. Yes. And it's taken me around the world. I've gone to China, Shanghai. I've been to Harvard. I've spoken at a dozen colleges, art schools. I mean, it all came from me reaching out and engaging people and learning about them and what they're about. And just by osmosis, they want to know about me. And then, I get to share my life. I get to learn about you. And here we are.
I love it.
So it's a great method. Don't let your grades or any shortcomings of people telling you can't do anything. That's just a lie that you're telling yourself. You tie your own shackles in life, and nobody can stop you. Yeah.
Great words of wisdom. Well, we've only got a couple little quick things here to talk with you, and we'll be tightening this up, but you've done so much. It's almost impossible to get everything, but we wanted to get the top things. Jen, let's talk. I know Pirates is on your mind. Let's talk a little Pirates.
Sure.
All right.
So your artistic talents enabled you the opportunity to honor an iconic ride, a Disney legend, and your friend at the same time. Can you share with us, with the audience, some insight into your Pirates of the Caribbean painting?
Right. So obviously Pirates started my career. So I had done the mansion piece, which was this big panorama. And I had done the ship before that. That was like one of the first paintings I got approved, and I did the ship firing on the fort, and that was an important one. But I wanted to do something that really encapsulated the feeling you got in the best part of that attraction, which I thought was, that the kind of the auction scene /fire. That to me is like the heart of the ride, where it all just comes to life and you're hearing the song. And that's my favorite part of the attraction. So when I got to meet Alice, she told me this wonderful story, which she's told countless times, about how she did the costumes for her husband's designs, Mark Davis, who did all the characters. And she was the costumer. And they had given her a small, tiny budget to do the costumes. And she was such a smart lady. Again, these Imagineers, they're built different than today's Imagineers. And she was so smart that she said, I need a bigger budget so I can do 2 sets of the costumes. And they didn't give it to her. Oh. Yeah. I mean, Walt Disney had to fund the Tiki Room because his own board wouldn't approve the money for audio animatronics for the for the parents, you know. So that's why it's called Walt Disney's Enchanted Tiki Room to
Right.
this day, because his own company didn't
His own
understand
company
what he was
didn't do
doing.
it, yeah.
And that happens still to this day. You know, there's a lot of bean counters that make decisions, and you need the creative people in charge. So she told me that they didn't give it to her, but years later, after she had kind of retired from Imagineering, and Walt was gone, and I think they'd asked her to do another set, that they would pay her for it. And okay, give me the money, and then boom, the next day she had the costumes. And like, how'd you do that so quick? It's like, because I've had them all these years in storage. I made 2 sets out of the first budget that you guys barely gave me. So she'd done 2 sets of the costumes, knowing that they would get worn out in the first round. So she finally got her due, you know, all those years later. I was smart. I figured it out. And so I wanted to honor that story. So if you look at this painting, it is accurate to the very first costumes that were ever on those figures.
Wow.
It's Alice's costuming. Those are her costumes on those characters.
It's incredible.
And she got to see it, which was great.
Yes.
She got to see the painting because I was working on it before she passed away. She passed away just not too long ago. So I got to show it to her, and she teared up. And to me, it was the greatest thing ever. To me,
love it.
I didn't care if it sold or not. I was doing it to warm that lady's heart.
Right.
Because that's the sweetest person I've ever met in all of Disney history. Alice Davis was the sweetest lady I've ever known.
That's
just
awesome.
so friendly, so sweet, so kind, so willing and open to share what her knowledge. And to me, that is the epitome of the kind of people that Walt put in positions of power.
Surround yourself with incredible people.
Yeah, Walt wasn't a good artist or even animator, but he knew what a good artist and animator and storyteller were. I mean, X didn't even know. He wasn't a story guy, but Walt heard his vacation stories and said, I think he can handle this one, and look what happened, you know?
Yeah.
Yo-ho, yo-ho, the greatest story of all. I mean, I'm sure Johnny Depp's really happy with X taking on that story job that Walt said he could do, that he himself didn't feel he was capable of, you know? I mean, when I talked to X about it, you know, at the time I went to his house and I talked about it, he was down to a whisper.
Right.
You know, he was at the end of his life, and he lived a very long, happy life. So don't feel bad about me. I've lived the greatest life ever, celebrated by many. But when I mentioned the name Walt, his eyes lit up, and he came back to life. And all of a sudden, all of his faculties came back, and he was telling me just the greatest stories ever about Walt and how he believed in him. And, you know, that's why I love Walt so much, because as a person who's art directed multi-million-dollar projects, you can get a big head about it, and you can get really egotistical about what you can do. But then I think about Walt, and I think about how he treated people and what he believed in and how he inspired people and how he just trusted him. I think the best story ever is when Bob Gurr told me about opening day. Now, Walt asked him to come on board because he was a car designer. Walt thought he could build motors, engines, cars completely, including the engine, and he couldn't. But he said, yeah, I could do that when he was asked to do Utopia. Opening day, hottest day on record. There he was, working underneath the cars because they'd all broken down. All of them. They'd all broken down. It was one of the hottest days, and Walt comes strolling up. And he says, well, Bobby, I guess we got to get these things up and running again. And he just kind of goes off. It's like, really? Like all these cameras? And this is, by the way, Utopia was considered a futuristic attraction. Freeways were a thing of the future.
Yeah.
Now it's just traffic. But back in the day, that was a futuristic thing. So imagine being opening day. The CEO of the company is coming around. He's on live television. Ronald Reagan is interviewing people as a commentator. Our great president was there. And you've got the most, futuristic attraction, and here comes the boss. And he said, all he says is, well, Bobby, I guess we got to get these things up and running again, and just starts walking on. And I'm thinking, well, what did you say? And he's like, I said, hey, Walt, it's really hot out here. I could use a garage or something to work in. I'm dying. And Walt heard him, or he didn't know if he heard him or not. But like an hour later, Walt's coming in, driving a tractor, dragging a shed behind him, saying, "Where do you want your damn garage?" So what does that tell you? What does that tell you about Walt the man, who, by the way, has been lied about, saying that he was against women, he was against Jews, he was anti-Semite, he was against black people. All lies.
All lies.
I know Floyd Norman. He's the first African-American animator in history.
And a great man.
Walt gave women the first job ever in animation. He gave them that job, Walt. And he had the Sherman Brothers writing all the great music. You were friends with these people.
Yes.
So what does this tell you about a man who on opening day is seeing all of the cars broken and just says that? This tells you two things about Walt. It tells you this is a man who knew that if he had berated his staff member, it wouldn't have helped. It would have made things worse. He would have gotten frazzled and stressed and probably had performance problems there getting the job done because he would have been stressed.
Yeah.
So he knew not to stress him out. He says, well, no problem, get him up. And then what else did he do? He did what Disney trains people to do. It's called problem adoption, and this is a Disney philosophy. This is in the book, The Disney Way.
Okay.
Walt embodied it. He didn't just hand the problem over to one of his people. He solved the problem himself.
Yep. He
solved it himself. So be like Walt, okay? Bosses out there in the world, be like Walt. I'd rather have one really good guy like Bob, a genius, than 20 average people that I have to micromanage. And that's what Walt did. He got the best of the best. He put them in a room and said, I want this. And then he let them do he gave them guardrails. And then a week later, he'd come in and say, where are we at? And this is what we got. Oh, I like that. But what if you did this? And then he'd come back another week later. I like this, but what if you did that? And then they'd work on it another week. And until eventually time would run out, money would run out, and they'd have to go. And when he did that, it caused these people who didn't even know that they could do this to give them 1,000% more than they ever thought they were capable of doing.
I love that.
The boss created the goal, gave them the boundaries to work within, and then left them alone and trusted them.
Yeah.
And then guided them. He didn't berate them. He didn't tell them they were wrong. He guided them into the direction he was hoping for. And that is why Disneyland is not a theme park. It's proof that even if you don't have a graduating, you don't have a degree, even if everybody thinks you're crazy, even if, people don't understand, experts don't understand you, that Disneyland is evidence that you can achieve anything.
Yeah.
If you believe in yourself and you have a direction and you have a goal and you go for it. So that's why I work for this company. That's why I love it so much. That's why I fight to preserve that core history that Disney has been built on that made it the greatest family brand of all time.
Your passion is intoxicating. Your loyalty to Walt is it's just incredible. And it makes me, I want to take a step back real quick. So we got two last things I want to ask you about. Let's go back real quick, if you could. Just take me a walk back in time for a moment. This is circa 1989. This was your first ever painting. You talked about it at the start of the interview. Yeah. We wanted to bring it here in the end. Why was Pinocchio was it one of your childhood favorites? Is that why the drive behind that?
Yeah. So when I was looking at all the different Disney movies that had come out up to the point of me being 18 in 1989, Pinocchio was my favorite because the backgrounds were masterpieces. They were a level of artwork that for some reason it was, again, that believable fantasy. It's like, wow, that's art. Uh-huh. Those are masterpieces. Those are things that should be hanging in a gallery. And Walt was so much about, his whole career was like showing that animators are artists, that this is an art form, that animation is an art form. And here I am, a guy advocating for digital artists just like Walt did for animation. I'm innovating with my mixed media master process in the same way he did with Fantasia. I had to do it because that's what makes things great. Taking risks, breaking some eggs, figuring out what's new. You don't go where everybody else is going. You go where they aren't going, and you give the public what they want. And to me, Pinocchio, still to this day, is the most beautiful
story.
I mean, the bubbles in the water. I mean, they just did. It was the first example, really good example of multiplaning that add a whole nother level of depth to animation. It blew my mind.
Right.
So when I got into high school, I wasn't much of an artist at all. I could barely do chicken scratches, which is the most annoying thing that people say to me, although it's not their fault because it's just natural for people to say, I can't even draw stick figures. But I have to snap back and say, that's how I started. I just didn't give up. I had passion and I just kept with it. Maybe art isn't your thing, but if it was, you could do what I'm doing and you could learn it.
Love it.
So I had a choice to go into Spanish or art. So of course I went into art, although I kind of regret it. I should have taken Spanish. But
everybody says that though, Joel. Everybody says that.
Yeah, I know. Big mistake there.
Well,
now my son's got a choice. Spanish is mandatory, but he had an option. I'm like, take Spanish. Trust me.
There you go. I love it.
He's a freshman in high school. So this was the first time I'd ever painted anything, and I'd never worked on I've never painted anything. So I didn't know anything about oil paints, and I was just kind of like trying to copy what I saw in this big, gigantic book. And by the way, that book that I held up, that's in here. That painting that I was copying is the book that I had bought that year and was copying. And I'll see if I can find it in here really quick. I probably can't, but let me see if I can find that really quick. And I'll show you what I was copying. And so the teacher, unfortunately, did not help me. She did not help me. I asked her to help me figure things out, and she would just basically take my paintbrush and then show it to me. So this is she'd do it. She'd paint on my painting, and I said, well, how did you do that? And she wasn't really a good teacher. But here was let me see if I can get it in the camera here. So here was there you go.
Yeah.
So I was just trying to copy that. That's what I was trying to copy.
That's pretty good for a first.
Pretty good. That's pretty good.
It's now lost its bindings. I've had this book all this time. It's funny that it's just conveniently here in my office. You can see how important this stuff is. So
I love it. I love that you still have all that. That's incredible.
I do, and I actually used a Sharpie to do the black outlining because I didn't know what the heck I was doing. So that was my first mixed media piece, technically. And I still have that painting in my closet. I will never sell it. It will be at some point probably in a museum somewhere if I ever achieve the other things that I can't talk about that I'm working on right now.
Yeah,
which is a TV show and a movie and a whole bunch of
he's got stuff that he can't talk about. I'm hoping that somewhere down the line he'll send me a text and say, hey, this and this just hit. If you got time, I'd love to come back for a few minutes so we could bring Joel back and talk about all that at that time. I can't
tell you this much.
Okay.
I can't tell you this much. So I was in a movie called #Blessed Playing Santa. That's why I have the Santa beard. And it just won every single festival out there. And I got nominated for Best Supporting Actor. I co-wrote a song that I sang called Santa Lives in You, which is, you can get on Spotify out there. It's everywhere. And then I got flown out to Branson to stay in a castle, and as Santa, I sang live in front of on all the live stages in front of 1,000 people, which I had never done before. That was a little surprising. I opened up all their Christmas shows out there singing this song live, and I got nominated for an HMMA award, which is equivalent to a Grammy. This is an award that's televised, that's relatively new, but it's dedicated to the movie, television, game industry, specifically for music. And so that was a really shock that I got nominated for that song. Somebody beat me who was a industry legend, which is perfectly fine. But the song is great, and I got to help with the lyrics and figure out the story behind the song. So out of that movie came the idea that I came up with this origin story called The Elf King, which was a Santa origin story. And as a result of me doing Friendlians, which is another program, another thing that I did. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's another program that came after GROWUMS. Friendlians teaches children family values and life lessons. Right. I built my own Netflix called the Friendlian Network. It was an app on the app stores. It got #1 rated top paid parenting app on the app stores. I pulled it because I'm about to do this show. I've got... I can't say the names, but there's a very famous Disney guy that's going to be my Jack Frost that everybody on this watching this would know. And
I can't wait for this project.
I can't say anything about it, but all I can tell you is I worked with this guy named Rod Nakamoto, and it's literally like Wozniak and Steve Jobs. He's the Wozniak to my Steve Jobs, and he came up with this toy technology, and I basically took it. And now we have toys that can do the Tiki room in your living room with robotics, Wi-Fi. We're talking about 1 million toys talking to each other endlessly at city quality sound, the capacity of controlling robotics. Toy Story for real. It has been achieved. I don't hope to do it. I've done it. It took me 10 years. And when the Santa origin story comes out, I will be able to talk to the toys through the television as Santa. So I'll be able to talk directly to the elves, and they'll be able to talk right back to me and sing along with me if I chose to turn it into a musical. So
absolutely incredible. I mean,
yeah,
we're on the edge, the cutting edge of something that is going to be spectacular. Well, and if it comes to fruition,
now
you heard about it here.
I showed this to Bob Gurr at his house. I demonstrated the technology to Bob, and just to kind of do a little off ramp there. Bob Gurr, not only did he do all the vehicles, but he's the guy that created the first Abraham Lincoln.
Yep.
Robot. He actually has the schematics on his wall of the original Abe. So I fired up the toys, and I had the Tiki Room and the Country Bear Jamboree playing through it. And his reaction was this. I'll do it exactly like he said it. Well, looky here. Look what you did. Walt would have loved you.
That's great.
I'm telling you. I don't care about fame and money. Moments like that are all that matter to me. If I got Bob, who is a certified genius, to say, look what you did. This is amazing. Walt would have loved you. That, to me, is the highest compliment anyone could ever give to me.
Absolutely.
So I'm literally picking up where Disney left off on audio animatronics. I can now do what you see in the Tiki Room anywhere.
That's incredible.
Anywhere.
And I want to let everybody know, we're not going to dig more into that. There's going to be, when we hear about that from Joel, and I've already asked him to please, when that all stuff comes to fruition, we know more about it, to let us know, because we will let everybody know here. I want to make sure everybody knows, Molly dropped the link in to #blessthemovie.com. You can go there and check it out. You can also find it on Up TV. You can find it on PureFlix, Amazon Prime, Tubi. If you want to see we've been putting the link in all night. I am telling you, we're done this interview. Click over and watch over on his website. Right at the very top is the music video for that. And I'm telling you, the song is fantastic. Santa Lives in You, the video. Yes.
Let me tell you something about that music video. So because I got nominated for the HMMA award, the only way they would allow me to enter is if I had a music video to go with it, but I didn't have one. Oh. So that music video was shot by me, by myself, in my garage in front of a green screen, and I edited the whole thing together in one night.
Wow! I would have never known that. I loved the music video. I actually called her and said, "I love this Christmas song. This is fantastic." And I sent it over to her on text. I was like, "Jen, go watch this." So
let me tell you about the lyrics. So when I told people I was playing Santa, I'm a Christian boy, so I had a preacher that was like, "Oh, so you're one of those? You're a distraction. Santa's a distraction." There's people out there that think that Christmas is a problem and Santa's problematic because it's a distraction to the season, all that. So it was really frustrating. So for me, Christmas is a great season. It's the only time of the year that we have to be selfless, stop thinking about ourselves, think about somebody else. I love that idea. And I like the lights, and I don't celebrate Christmas for any religious connotation. I just like the smell of a Christmas tree and presents and all that fun stuff. So I made sure that the songwriter, Donna, it was Donna Bucavage, and we had two Donnas actually that wrote this song, and they're credited so we had one that wrote the lyrics and music, and another one that was working with her to kind of come up with this thing. So I had the idea of, let's write a song where we get people to realize that it's not a one-time thing just Christmas,
Right.
the giving.
Year round.
It's a year-round thing. And Santa is really you. Santa lives in you. The original St. Nicholas, when I started researching for this show, I wanted to find out about who the St. Nicholas guy was. So he's a guy that was born in Mira, which is modern-day Turkey, where camels are. There's no reindeer, there's no snow.
Right.
In a port town, and I was shocked to discover that his parents were wealthy merchants. They didn't say what he did, what the parents did, but I found out that they died of a plague.
Ooh.
And here I was on the set of #Blessed with a mask, getting my temperature taken I'm like, are you serious? Really? And I started reading a little bit more about it. I'm like, wait a second. His parents died of a plague. They left him a great wealth. And because he was a man of the cloth, he didn't need the money. And he probably was giving money to children whose parents died in the plague to give them a little bit of hope, to give them a little bit of like, it's okay, you're going to make it through this dark moment. And I'm like, wow, we wouldn't have a Santa Claus if it wasn't for a plague. Who would have thought that? I didn't know that.
I didn't know that until tonight.
Right. And I guarantee you there's a lot of people right now going to Wikipedia reading about St. Nicholas right now, and it's true. And not only that, I'm like, well, how did we get from St. Nicholas to the Santa Claus guy? So that's what the story's about. I figured out how to answer all those questions of why does Santa need cookies? Why does he go through the chimney? Well, how does he go around the world in one night? Why does he use reindeer? Why does he give presents at all? You know, like, what's this all about? Like, he doesn't even get a present on Christmas Day. Why does he do this? You know, he doesn't even get a thank you at the end of it all. So these are questions I had as a kid. And so working with Steven, I got to meet with him one day, and I asked him the secret of his success. And he said, the greatest movies of all time, the top 100, fit this simple formula. They were all, Steven Spielberg. They're all stories that we were telling ourselves long before the storyteller came along and told them. So he gave me a few examples. He said, did you ever think that maybe your toys were playing with you when you went to the playing without you when you went to the bathroom? And I said, oh, yeah. Toy Story, pretty successful, wouldn't you say? I said, yeah. He said, well, when you were told to put your toys away and your parents were telling you that, you didn't want to do it, wouldn't it have been nice to have a time machine to see what kind of a kid they were? Back to the Future, pretty big success. Wouldn't you agree? Yeah. I said, yeah. I said, he's like, well, what about the artifacts in that Bible, most read book in history? Indiana Jones did pretty good, huh? I said, wait a second, Steven. I worked on Titanic, okay? And that's the greatest movie of all time. And nobody was thinking about a ship, everybody going to die on it. That was not a story I wanted to tell myself, okay? So your philosophy falls apart on here I was saying this to Steven. I'm like, trying to kick him in the nuts with his theory. And I said, and he said, wait a second, that's my best example. I said, really? Please explain yourself. And he said, okay, well, let me ask you a question. How long did Jack know Rose before he was willing to die for her? Was it one day or two? Do you think maybe there were a few girls out there wanted a Jack? I said, oh, yeah, I think maybe that explains it. I say, he says, wait a second. How many men out there that have lint in their pockets, not even 2 pennies to scrape together, but they got talent, would love to steal away the hot chick from the rude, narcissistic, rich guy?
Oh,
I bet there are a few kids that wanted that exact thing to happen to them, and they watched that movie so many times over and over and over until we all got sick of it, just like Frozen. They watched it into the ground until hearing that, that song that Celine Dion was ear-bleeding music, but his philosophy was great. And so as much as I'm a fan of Walt and his philosophies, I've learned from people like Chuck Jones and who I've got to meet personally, and Steven Spielberg and Bob Gurr and all these amazing people. So my goal in life is, how do I get to meet these amazing people and learn the keys and secrets to their success? Because that's all you need to know.
Yeah,
like I said, it's not about the grades you make, it's about the hands you shake.
Absolutely.
And I'm proof of it.
Incredible.
Walt is proof of it. Steve Jobs is proof of it. All those guys quit their schooling and went for the gold and believed in themselves and said, I don't know, you don't know what I'm doing. I'm going to do it anyway. You don't know what I'm doing. I'm going to do it. And that philosophy has taken me around the world.
Love it.
So if you're wondering what's the keys to success, after meeting Spielberg and Chuck Jones and Bob and all these amazing people, they all have that same philosophy of, I'm going to do it. I don't care what you think. I'm just going to do it.
Love it.
You know, and it works.
It does work.
So you wanted me to leave everybody with a message. That's the message.
That's a great message, and that is a great thing. Jen, could you do me a little wrap up here, and then we'll do a final thought and thank our guest tonight.
Yeah, sure. So,
oh, you're fine. You're fine.
As we close tonight, I first want to thank Joel for his time. A little bit extra time than we thought it was going to be, but definitely worth it. Thank you for being with us. But additionally, for your class, your tact, your professionalism. When we met you last month at the Festival of the Arts, it definitely was a good memory, and we thank you for sharing your time with us. Joel, your entertainment talents and value are seen across multiple platforms, genres, artistic themes. All of Joel's social media links have been posted in the chats tonight. They are also permanently pinned in the description of this video, of this YouTube video, so you could find them there. And we encourage you to follow Joel on YouTube. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
He has an announcement.
Yeah. This is a very important announcement. So if you want to come out and meet me, I'm going to be at the DCA Food and Wine event on March 9th and 10th, which is just 2 weekends away, from 11 to 1 in downtown Disney in the Disney. There's this Disney like home store that they put in they're putting the artists up in. So from 11 to 1, and then at DCA off the page from I think 3 to 5 in DCA. So you have to have a ticket to get into the DCA park. But if you don't have a ticket, you can meet me and get some of that awesome artwork. Now, they held back half the inventory from the Festival of the Arts, and they have this sister event. So I have the other half. So it all sold out in Florida. So get there early. Yeah, get there early, and we'll take some pictures and give you some memories.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, Jen, for that quick recap. Again, the links been in all night, like Jen says, and also in the description of the video for everybody to find them here tonight. Final thought of the night is something we like to do. It's just a quick, simple thought. So we always ask our guests to go first. And Joel, throw it over to you. Final thought of the night.
The final thought is this. I've achieved every dream that I set out to achieve, except for one, and I'm working on that one right now, which is private, and I'm going to keep that one quiet. Okay. But after working on all of these legendary projects, working with some of the biggest companies on earth, with some of the biggest people on earth, whatever you do, don't live for yourself. Don't try to acquire things. Okay. Mm-hmm. It took me a long time to realize, and it was ego and it was youth that kicked me in the butt when I was in my 20s. So it took me into almost my 40s before I really learned this very valuable lesson, which is the things that you do for yourself, when you die, they die with you, and nobody will remember a thing you did. But the things that you do for other people, if you share your knowledge like I'm doing right now on this program with you, and you sharing your knowledge with me, there will be versions of me that live in your mind forever, and you can live forever. And there's nothing more rewarding in my life to know that I could be a selfless human being, and I really gear my projects and the things that I do to be selfless acts where I don't really care about the money or the fame. I just love giving myself to people, giving my knowledge to people. And I like at the end of the conversation where people say, wow, that was a really euphoric moment. I feel like it was almost spiritual, like I learned something. That's my goal in life, to kind of achieve that in the people that I engage with. And I know for a fact Walt Disney did that for me. So pay it forward.
I love it. Very well said. Very well said. Jen?
Yeah.
Final thought of the night?
Wow. I don't know how to follow that. Thanks for putting me after that, Pete. Thank you.
Yeah.
Wow. The only thing I really want to say, and I think a lot of the people watching and those that are chatting would agree, we just want to say thank you. Thank you for opening up our eyes to all of these things that we didn't even know existed and was going on. And if it wasn't for you, we would never know. So thank you for sharing your knowledge and your experience and your stories. It's been an amazing night, and I'm just so happy that you decided to spend time with us, and looking forward to everything that you have coming up in the future, and wishing you all the best.
Oh, exceptional.
And by the way, Bob still does tours. He does a little book tour. If you want to get close to Walt Disney, this is the closest to Walt Disney you'll ever get. And let me tell you something. We lost Raleigh. We lost Alice.
Yeah.
We lost a lot of legends recently.
Yes.
There's not too many of them left. Go take Bob's tour. If you ever see him, give him a big handshake and a hug. Thank that man for his service, because until he had a window on Main Street, people didn't know who he was. Only the 9 old men were really famous,
really
and
focused.
they didn't know anything about these little guys. So any cast member that you meet, thank them, because they got to put up with a lot of stuff and they don't get paid very well. These people are there to make you happy. They're there to take care of you with a smile, and they're dedicated to this company. Forget about whatever the company's doing that you like or don't like or whatever it is. Understand that there's a whole bunch of people that make this company go, and there's people like me that care about it and care about the customer experience and care about the people that are fans, because I was one of them. So, that's all I have to say about that. But that's an important thing. Go out and see Bob before he's gone. Okay, because when he dies, all of his amazing stories will be lost to time.
Yeah.
And you better hope that he's written some of these things down.
Yeah, absolutely. That's well said, Joel. For my final thought, I just want to obviously follow up, Jen, with the thank you for taking the time to one, be open to talk to Jen and I when we first walked up to you. Your graciousness, your politeness, your euphoria, your excitement, the passion that you bring is seen meeting you personally and here tonight. I'm sure that all of our viewers that are watching tonight live and will watch on the replay in time to come will see that as well. To me, your talents need to be seen by so many people, because you've touched so much and so many with what you do, and I know you're going to continue to do that. With this channel, one of the things that I've tried to do is surround myself with incredible people like this young lady and the others that do my other shows with me, to bring the magic of Disney and the happiness that I believe Walt would want through what we do here, treating people with respect, showing people that you can put a smile on someone's face even when they're having the toughest day. So I'm grateful for that.
It's free. It
It's
costs
free.
you nothing.
It is free. I welcome you to come back and to highlight anytime, anything with me. You have a personal way to get a hold of me at all times. I'd like to finish the interview, and Joel, I'll ask you once we hit the music and we end to hang tight for just a second. But I'd like to finish the interview, I think, the most appropriate way that I can do. I found a quote about Alice that hit me so hard that I read it to Jen the other night, and she said to me, "Pete, that is what you need to read at our meetup." And I looked at her and I said, "Jen, you're a genius." And I did. That's what I said.
Yeah.
You don't even have to tell me what it is yet. I want to hear it, but I already know it's a gem of all gems.
Well,
so I can't wait to hear this.
This is how I want to finish this interview tonight. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope you've enjoyed tonight with Jen and I here sitting Disney Dialogues with our good friend, Joel Payne. I hope you'll come back in the future for more of these interviews. I hope you'll follow Joel and give him the love. If you see him somewhere, tell him you found us about it over here. And by all means, buy something from him and ask him to put something special in the back. I'm sure he would. As Alice put it, I'm going to look over here and I apologize. As Alice put it, I will always say that good friends are the jewelry of your heart. They are your riches. If you don't have friends, you can have all the money in the world, but you're not happy. You can be poor and have lots of friends, and if nothing else, you can sit on the side of a hill and enjoy a sunset and a bottle of wine and a loaf of bread and be happier than any rich person because you have all the riches around you. Ladies and gentlemen, it's been our honor here tonight. I thank you, sir, for being here. We will see you next time on Disney Dialogues. Everybody, good.